Okay, getting late. It's almost tea time. Algebra students, lesson 62. Displaying data in stem and leaf plots and histograms. Two things to do today. If you haven't gone and done lab 6, you need to stop right now and go back and do lab 6. And push all the little buttons on your TI-84 in the exact way that they have there so that you know where I'm going with this. And the computer, or the calculator part, is not a problem for you at this point. If you don't go and do this, you're not going to be able to do a whole lot of the things that I described in this video. So you need to make sure that you go back and you do lab 6 so that you know how to make a histogram on your calculator. Okay, if you've done that, keep listening. You're going to need a few things today to complete this lesson. Number 1, you're going to need the pencil. 2, somewhere to write down notes. Anything that you write in a notebook, you're allowed to use on a test, so you need to be writing notes on the video or out of the book so that you can use that on the test and help yourself out. I would think that for this one, you're going to need the homework pages that I emailed. You can print off whatever you need there. It has grids on it, but graph paper might be handy for you for this lesson to do by hand the histograms by hand, and the stem and leaf plots are really easy to do if you use graph paper rather than just normal paper, unless you're very, very precise. And then a couple other things that you could use for this lesson would be stuffed guinea pig and a bag of Cheez-Its. Just saying, you know. Okay, let's talk about baseball. Back in the day, the big home run hitter, the guy that had the record for home runs for the longest amount of time, 714 lifetime home runs, was this guy right here, Babe Ruth. Pretty famous name, you know, candy bar named after the guy. And here's a list of how many home runs he hit in the seasons when he played. Okay? A lot of those are pretty big numbers, and even today, he'd be considered a great home run hitter. I put that list of numbers in order, and I'd like you to just take that list of numbers and put it in to your calculator under list 1. Okay? Now, I've already done it on my calculator, and so in a little while I'll go and I'll turn mine on and show you my list. But you should do that right now. Hit pause and type in the list of Babe Ruth's home runs in list 1. Okay, we also have another guy, Roger Maris, who played for the Yankees in the 60s. And in the summer of 1961 is a big deal because Roger Maris, and I don't know if there's anybody else, but we're hitting a lot of home runs. And it looked like they might get close to Babe Ruth's record at that time was 60 home runs. And he eventually, I think it was like on the last day or the second to last day of the season, he hit his 61st home run. But as you can see from Roger Maris's list, not really known for being a big home run hitter. 39's pretty good, but that was the most. And then you've got 61. It's a bit of an outlier. You remember that term from lesson 68 or 48. Doesn't seem to fit where Babe Ruth's, he's hitting in the 40s, 50s, and then the 60s more often than not. Okay, 2 lists of guys there. And what we're going to do is we're going to take that data and we're going to display it in a couple of different ways. Stem and leaf plot and histogram. Let's start with the stem and leaf plot. And first thing I need to do is I need to define a term for you. And that term is relative frequency. You can see it in your book on the top of the one page on the lesson, relative frequency. We would look at the Babe Ruth's and we'd say 3 times here he hit 46 home runs. So we would take the number of times that he did some event, and we divide that by the total number of things in our list. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. That 3/15 of all the data are 46. And you would come up with a relative frequency for each separate number on the list. So this would be 1/15, 1/15, 1, 1, 2/15, 3/15, 1/15, 1/15, 2/15, 1/15, and 1/15. If you're counting up relative, related to one another, the frequency. This can also be expressed as a decimal, but a fraction way of expressing it is a good idea, because you maintain that seeing how many things there were altogether. Okay, so let's go to the first one. Let's do stem and leaf plot. And you're going to start with your list. And I gave these lists to you all in order, but sometimes the lists do not come in order. So I want to show you how you can put it in your calculator and get it to list the things in order without having to do that by hand. So I'm going to have to pause for just a second and then move over to my other camera. Okay, here's what my TI whatever screen looks like. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my stats and to edit. And you can see here that my list of Ruth is out of order. It doesn't work. Okay, your list for something else in this lesson might be out of order. So here's what you do. You go back to stat, and you notice that number 2 there says sort A. And A means ascending. So from the smallest value to the greatest value. And D stands for descending. I'm going to do sort A with my list for Roger Maris, which might be for you, might be list 1. Okay, and once I hit enter, it says that it did that, and I'm going to go and do that again for my list of Babe Ruth's numbers. And I just have to trust it unless I go back into stat and to edit, and then I can see that now my list is in order, where before it wasn't. So that's really important for you to see some of the stats or analyze the stats that they ask you to do in the lesson. Okay, that's the first thing, sort in ascending order. And then the next thing I'm going to do with that is I'm going to divide it up in by place value. All the things that are in the 10s, all the things that are in the 20s and the 30s, I'm going to put together. Let's just take Roger Maris's stuff first. What I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line here, and I'm going to put in the tens place in this column, and I'm going to put the ones place in that column. So the first one, I need a 0 here because I have the value 8. And then I'm going to put a 1 there for the 10s, 2, 3, and then we don't have anything in the 4s and 5s, but I'm going to put them there in the 40s and 50s, and then I put a 6 down there. All these represent the tens place in a number. Now for the rest of the values, all the ones place, to represent any one particular piece of data, I'm just going to put the ones place, and then if I have another one that's like that, I'm going to put just a single digit right next to it. So this represents 13, this represents 14, and this represents 16. So I'm going to continue to do that. I'm going to just put the ones place over here for anything that's a 20. Nothing there, nothing there, and I put 1 there. And kind of, if you look at it sideways, you kind of see that it makes a bar graph, right? If you do this by tens, this is 1 high, 3, 3, 2, 0, 0, and 1. So it gives you a little bit of visual perspective on how those numbers are distributed. Okay. Let's do the same thing with Babe Ruth. Or actually, what I'll do is I'll show you mine that I did, but again, I have to switch over to my other camera. So here's Ruth's. You can see nothing in the 0s, nothing in the 10s, but then there's 22, 25, 34, 35, 41, 41, 46, 46, 46, 47, 49, 54, 54, 59, and 60. And again, the same thing applies here. If you look at it sideways, you can tell that he hit oftentimes in the 40s, and the next highest number in the 10s that he hit were in the 50s. This guy was a big home run hitter. And the data is all kind of clumped in one area instead of being spread out all over the place. In fact, 59 and 60 are 1 away from each other. You can see that visually better if we write it as a stem, which are the tens place, and the leaf, which are the ones place type of format. And actually, I've done a side-by-side here of Maris and Ruth. And you can see Maris's numbers kind of clumped on the low end, then a big gap where Babe Ruth used to hit all his home runs, and then you got that 61 sitting out there all by itself, an obvious outlier in the data set. Okay, back to me. The book asks you to then take this information and analyze it. And it's the same as of any list. There are 3 measures of center that they want you to look for and a measure of spread. And the measures of center were the mean or the average, the median, which is the middle value of the list, and the mode, which is the number that occurs most often. Roger Maris's list doesn't have a mode. Everything occurs only once. But Babe Ruth's does have one because 46 occurs 3 times and nothing else occurs any more than that. As far as the spread, you're looking at the range, and all you need is the maximum value, take away the minimum value. So for Roger Maris, it's quite a significant spread, 61 minus 8. Okay? But for Babe Ruth, it's still a pretty big spread, but not as much, 60 minus 22. You can use your calculator to find several of these values. You can use your calculator to help you with the mean and the median and the maximum and the minimum. And so let me show you that really quickly on the other camera. Okay, here are my lists again for Maris and Ruth underneath the stat category. If I push that stat button again, I get these 3 menus, edit, calculate, and tests. If I go over with my arrows to calculate, the very first thing there on the list is 1 variable statistics. And if I choose that, and then choose whatever list that I have, in your case it's probably list 1 or list 2, I add one specifically for Roger Maris. I go down and I calculate this stuff, and it gives me the very first thing there on the list is the mean. X bar is the mean, 26.1. It also gives me, if you note, gives me a minimum score, minimum X. It tells me the median right there, 24.5. It gives me the maximum score as well. So it gives me quite a few of the things that I'm looking for right there without me having to do a lot of extra work. And that's a good idea. Let me go and do that one more time for Mr. Ruth. We see here his average is much higher, 43.93 home runs a year. We got a minimum of 22, a median score of 46, a maximum of 66. Plenty of information there to do something with. Okay, skill number 2 is going to be doing histograms, which you know there's a fancy kind of bar graph. All the intervals have to be the exact same size and they have to be right next to each other. And so if you did the lab, you know how to display that, or at least you got some practice with that. And I want to make note of 2 things that you're going to want to watch out for. Is if you put in a new list, then you're going to need a new window to view the thing in because the numbers are going to be different for every set. So one thing that you want to do after putting the list in and asking it for that particular type of setup is that you're going to need to go and push the zoom button and then pick stat. They'll take whatever's in your statistics and will fit the window for your particular set of data. The second thing is it doesn't always give you a nice size of interval between the bars. And so one thing we might have to do is adjust the window and change the X scale so that the bars fit nicely and you can see them and make sense of them and draw them accurately when you use your graph paper. So I'm just going to take the same data and show you how I would do that on my calculator. Okay, I'm going to go quickly. So here's my home screen. I'm going to go second y equals for the stat plot, and I already have mine as on, and I've chosen this particular type and put in my X list. For yours it'll be like list 1 or list 2. And then I push that zoom button and go down until I get to zoom stat, which is down there at number 9. And here's what mine displays. When I hit the trace button, it shows me what the intervals are and how many are in each category. But I don't like those. I want to see these by tens. So I push the window button, and I'm going to move this from down to 0 and 70 to give myself nice clean intervals. And I want each one to be 10 wide. And now when I push the graph button, I get this. And I can see that Maris, when I hit trace, he had 1 in the 0 to 10. He has 3 in the 10 to 20. And you can see the same thing. Same thing will be true of Babe Ruth. His graph, though, will look differently than yours will. But you need to make sure that you copy this down the way that looks on your calculator. That's all for now.